Matthew Brown was walking outside of his favorite coffee shop. He had no idea how he arrived there, what his plans were, or what the time was. A woman was sitting on a nearby bench reading a book. Mr. Brown decided to go up to the woman and ask her the time. Just as Mr. Brown finished asking his question, the woman shrieked with terror and fled, leaving her book flipped upside down on the bench. Mr. Brown saw others giving him strange and fearful looks. Everyone was trying to get out of Mr. Brown's path at all costs when he walked down the street. One man even jumped into the fountain trying to get out of Mr. Brown's path. This is very strange, Mr. Brown thought. He decided that he should try to get home, but no taxi driver or bus driver would stop for him. As soon as they spotted him, they quickly sped away. Mr. Brown became very worried. He thought he would call a family member or a friend to come pick him up. He saw a payphone and decided to try calling his wife first. A voice he didn't recognize picked up the phone. "Hello, may I speak to Mrs. Brown?" asked Mr. Brown. The person responded, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Brown is at a funeral. Earlier this week, her husband, Mr. Brown, passed away in an accident when he was on his way to get coffee."
There was a bride who had just gotten married, and after the ceremony, they danced and played music and even played games, even old school games. Hide and seek was one of those games. The bride decided she would go upstairs in the attic and hide in her grandfather's trunk. She thought no one would find her there. So as she climbed into the trunk, the lid hit her in the head and knocked her unconscious. She fell in the trunk. The lid fell and locked behind her. No one knew how long she called for help or tried to get out of that trunk. They looked for her for weeks. The groom and others couldn't find her. They considered she was just lost. Years later, a maid, looking for something, went in the attic, opened the trunk. Ah! There was the bride, still in her gown, but it was only a skeleton.
Mary and George recently bought a beautiful old home out in the country, and Mary immediately started making plans for her new rose garden. In the clearing, an old, creaky bench sits next to a large oak post. "This post will be tricky to move," George tells her. "It's really stuck in there, but we'll do what you want." When they see each other later, the previous owner, Miss Linda, tells Mary that the spot she has chosen was once a summer home. Many years ago, when her brother was just a child, James had snuck in and fallen asleep near the old oak post. Miss Linda had found him writhing on the ground, screaming in terror. It was days before he told her what he had dreamed of. He dreamed he had been on trial sometime in the past. The judge had asked him impossible questions, already clearly convinced that James was guilty. The dream flashed forward, and James found himself on a wooden platform, flames growing underneath him. Later that year, Miss Linda and James snuck into the summer house again. As it grew dark, they could hear faint voices, but they knew they were all alone. But the closer they got to the old oak post, they soon realized, the louder the voices got. Back in the present day, Mary and George had a fitful night's sleep. Mary could have sworn she heard someone breaking in, but there was no sign of intrusion anywhere. Then George told Mary about his horrible dream. He had been arrested and stood trial before a judge that twisted his words and mocked him, already sure of a guilty verdict. The scene changed, and George realized he was accused of witchcraft and about to be burned at the stake. He awoke then, drenched in a cold sweat. Feeling anxious and overwhelmed, Mary set out to sketch her garden plans in the night air. She was packing up her things as the sun was setting when she saw a ghastly face in the bushes. She screamed, ran inside, and collapsed on the bed. A few days later, a college professor arrived at the front door, asking if they had seen a similar engraving to the one he showed them. Mary fell to the ground. It was the man she had seen in the bushes. This man, the professor explained, John Hawthorne, was the Chief Justice during the Salem witch trials. He died in agony and was buried on this property. The professor went on to explain that after the trials, Hawthorne was banished from town and lived a miserable existence. His ghost haunted the area after he died. Angry townspeople had driven a stake into his grave to curse him for all the lives he had ruined. The old oak post was the only thing keeping him in the ground.
There were some friends at a party one night, and there was a graveyard down the street, and they were talking about how scary it was. One of the boys said, "Don't ever go to the graveyard and stand on a grave after dark. The person inside will reach out and grab you and pull you under." One of the girls said, "That's not true. That's superstition." And the boy said to her, "I'll give you $20 if you go stand on a grave." She said, "I'm not afraid of a grave. I'll go right now." The boy said, "Here, take my knife. Put it in the dirt in the grave so we know where you were." So the girl started off to the graveyard. "There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm not scared." The graveyard had lots of shadows, and it was quiet like death. The girl walked around for a bit, and she found a grave. She stood on the grave, and she plunged that knife into the dirt. When she turned around to try to walk away, she couldn't. Something had a hold of her. "What's got a hold of me?" She tried again, and she couldn't move. And then she screamed! "Ah!" After a while, when she didn't return, her friends came looking for her. They finally found her body sprawled over a grave. What she didn't realize that she had plunged the knife into her skirt and into the dirt. And that was the only thing holding her back. The poor girl had died of fright.